Hello everyone and welcome to Outriders New Horizon. In today's video I'm going to share with you the Technomancer Bomberman build. We're focusing on the legendary Torrential Downpour set, and Scrapnel will be our main source of DPS. Before we start, in case you enjoy the content of the channel and you don't want to miss any upcoming videos I release throughout the week, feel free to subscribe. So without any further delay, let's just jump right into it. Let's start with our skills. Scrapnel, of course, is our main DPS source for AoE and single target DPS, and because of the Torrential set, we have 6 charges. This seemed awesome in paper, however, it makes things difficult to maximize the DPS and the potential of the Scrapnel, and using other skills such as the Pain Launcher, the Tool of Destruction, the Blighted Turret. I had problems using these skills as the rotation felt clunky and out of order. We didn't take as much benefit of the other skills. That's why I decided to make things a little simpler by adding 2 skills that don't impact so much the rotation. However, they elevate the Scrapnel's damage and increase our single target DPS and survivability. That's why the choice are the Blighted Rounds and the Fixing Wave. Blighted Rounds are there to apply toxic to enemies, debuff them, and they're much better compared to ultimate toxic bullets because you can apply it to every single enemy across the map within seconds, and you can increase your DPS and survivability exponentially. Fixing Wave is there not to increase our survivability, but to make sure that we have blighted rounds constantly in our weapon, and that's why we only use it. We don't need any less than 14 seconds cooldown. That's why I haven't invested in mods or other talents. 14 seconds because we're using the Damascus offering. Spoiler alert, it has a high ammo count and you won't have a problem to keep up 100% of the time the blighted rounds. So let's see what mods we're using to increase our DPS and then the talents. We're using 3 pieces of the Torrential set: the head, the chest and the legs. All 3 pieces have Anomaly power, skill life leads and cooldown reduction. This way we maximize our DPS and survivability. For the 2 epic pieces, I decided to go with Anomaly power, cooldown reduction and status power. The latter is to increase the damage of the toxic and thus a little bit our DPS and survivability, because you honestly don't need any more skill life leads. You have, I think, 33%, we'll see in a little bit. And as you can see, I have added the Radical Therapy and the Euthanizer, so we increase our single target DPS by 40% on enemies afflicted by Toxic. This will just resolve the problem to survivability because you apply Toxic to everyone, and it will tick by a lot of damage, and we deal a lot more damage to elites and bosses, because that's the only thing we lack with this build. We don't have the best single target DPS, however, we have one of the potentially best AoE damage build for the Technomancer. It's very consistent, and thanks to our skills we resolve the problem to use the maximum potential for the Scrapnel. For the weapons, we're using 2 Damascus offering, because we intend to never change from the Damascus offering. We have the Claymore Torrent, the Shadow Comet. This is actually one of the best mods you can have for single target and AoE DPS. I have tested other mods, but these 2 seem to be the best couple, the best combination. I have also tested another I will recommend to you later for maximize survivability. But we have the second Damascus offering for only one reason: to apply the ultimate toxic bullets just in case we run out of blighted rounds. Honestly, after you get used to the rotation and you are a little careful, you can never run out of blighted rounds unless you spam it and you miss all your shots. However, in case you misclick, because sometimes I misclick my weapon switch, you can lose your blighted rounds and they have more than 30 seconds cooldown, and you need to apply toxic to certain enemies to survive. That's why we have the ultimate toxic bullets, just in case. The sidearm is irrelevant, I never use it, I never apply it to the rotation, so I only use my main weapon, and secondary weapon is there just in case. So one pro tip, make sure to transmog your second Damascus offering so you can tell which one is for the single target DPS and which one is in case you run out of toxic bullets. Let's move on to the talents. We focus on the Demolisher tree to maximize our Anomaly power so we can maximize the damage from the Scrapnel and the set bonus. We take everything that reduces the cooldown and increases Anomaly power. I have also taken Wipeout, is one of my favorite talents to increase our single target DPS for bosses and elites, and I have taken the Armored unit. As you have seen, we don't have any defensive modes, and without this, you may have problems surviving. With armor unit, you don't have much problem if you are a little familiar with some levels, apply toxic to many enemies, and armor unit you should be good. However, if you still have trouble surviving, I will recommend you some alternate modes for the armor and weapons after we finish off with the talents. I have also gone a little bit to the tech summon to reduce the cooldown of the fixing wave just enough, because 14 seconds is more than enough to have blighted runs 100% of the time, and we have taken the exposing toxin and of course marked for execution to have the best vulnerable out there, and that's why we also invested to status power to increase the duration of vulnerable as high as possible. Moving on to the flex slots for both the armor and weapon modes. In case you want to increase your survivability and become probably immortal, you have to replace power simulation because it's the flex slot with damage absorber. Power simulation is there just to increase and maximize the potential of Scrapnel and the set bonus of the Torrential set. We can sacrifice that anomaly power to increase our armor and resistance, because without the damage absorber we have around 60% mitigation thanks to our talents. With damage absorber we'll have 75% mitigation. However, in case you replace damage absorber and you still somehow find yourself dying, you probably doing something wrong, probably don't apply toxic to enemies or run out of blighted rounds. However, we can also replace the weapon mode to maximize the survivability. And of course, I'm talking about Fortress. If you don't have problems to run a little lower and in the timers, because honestly, Shadow Comment it's much better than Fortress in this build. It deals more damage, it contributes a lot in the rotation to destroy the elites, but Fortress will increase our damage for the toxic, the damage for the Scrapnel, and of course 30% armor and resistance. And the resistance not so much because we only have 30% resistance, so it's increased by around 9%. However, we have a lot more armor and will go very close to the cap thanks to the Fortress, and you will probably never be able to die. So in case you don't have a problem, just replace Shadow Comet with Fortress and the power simulation with damage absorber and you should be good to go. So about the rotation and some tips when using the build, it's actually pretty straightforward. We have to apply toxic to as many enemies as we can to increase our survivability and our DPS. Make sure to proc the weapon modes against elites and bosses or very high health enemies, and use Scrapnel to just kill groups of enemies or elites and bosses. Try to bring all the enemies together because Scrapnel has a very good range, because we use all the tier 1 modes to increase the range, the DPS and everything, so you will maximize your single target AoE DPS. So a huge tip about the Scrapnel that we will see now in the background. You have 6 charges, as you can see. We can use all 6 charges, let's say in the floor here. This also applies to the expeditions. If you wait 7 seconds to get the cooldown back, as you can see, the Scrapnel won't disappear. You still have 6 proximity rounds down. And this is unlimited. They will only disappear under 2 circumstances. If an enemy triggers them, or if you use another Scrapnel, because now you see, you use another Scrapnel, the other disappeared. If you use another Scrapnel, the previous one disappears. So they are tied to the cooldown, or you can have a maximum number, let's say 6. This can allow you to do very crazy and very nice things with the Scrapnel. For example, you can use them to defend the circle very effectively, because when you know the enemies will spawn, you can just throw the Scrapnels there, wait for the enemies to spawn, and you will eventually get the cooldown back. So you can use approximately 12 Scrapnel grenades in a very short period of time, making this one of the best defending builds for the circle, or make other shenanigans to throw 6 Scrapnel when you know, for example, where a Broodmother will spawn beforehand, so you will damage her when she goes down, and in the meantime you will already get back the cooldown, or you're going to get the cooldown much sooner to allow you to damage her once again with 6 proximity mine grenades. Overall, this build has excellent AoE, very good survivability without investing anything in mods, and the timers are very decent compared to other builds. You don't need to run 15 or 20 minute expedition, you do them much faster, not as fast as the Borealis set because you can compare to that single target DPS, however, it can be comparable to the Rocketman or similar specs. And I honestly believe this version is the best because it's simpler, yet effective. It increases your single target DPS by more than 60% because of the 40% of the mods and another 21% of the improved vulnerable. And solves the problem we have the clunky rotation if you use the Blighted Turret or any other skills. I have tried those, I have tried other combinations, the Blighted Turret, the Cold Snap, the Tool of Distraction, the Paint Launcher, the Cryo Turret even, and it wasn't as effective. It made the rotation very clunky, that's why I prefer this simpler yet effective version. And that was it for today's video. I really hope this will help you build your own version of the Torrential Downpour set for the Technomancer, and I may plan to release a more in-depth analysis video as I do in some of the other builds that will be more lengthy because I will delve deeper why I chose these modes, what other things and why they don't work so well, what other alternatives we can use for the modes or what other modes I used, and depending on how well this video goes or if it is requested by the viewers. So feel free to stay tuned for more upcoming videos for Outriders, New Horizon and other video games, and as always I wish you all a wonderful day.